Today's Sketch and Chat is a reality check for all you creative types out there. Comic artists, writers, animators. If you have original characters, pull up a chair and have a listen. We're doling out harsh truths and paradoxical solutions today. Howdy folks, Shell Presto DiBaggio here. Awesome artist, remarkable writer, and undaunted luminary of my time. My life is your lesson. So sit back, watch me draw part of my Incorrigible IMPS comic for Bexim's Bazaar magazine, and let me tell it to you straight. Here's my bad news for you. No one cares about your original characters. Nope, not even your mother. She's just saying she does to be nice. Okay, that last bit was a little too harsh, but it's still a valid point, and it might be true. More to the point, if you're a comic book creator, no one cares about your first comic. If you're a writer, no one cares about your first book. If you're an indie filmmaker, no one cares about your first cartoon or short film. And to top it off, the world doesn't owe you an audience. Your work may be better than the next guy's. It may be better than the best-selling thing right now. But because your thing is new, and the other things already exist and have a following, no one is going to care what you're doing. Droves of people will not flock to your first effort unless you're really, really lucky. And they have no reason to. They don't know you, and they don't know your work. I'm not saying that to deter you. I'm saying that to prepare you. And I'm saying that from experience. My husband and I have published 6 books together so far. The day we published the first one, a short story collection called Martian War Chronicles: Population of Loss, no one gave a damn. A couple people bought it, and that was exciting, but then crickets. It came out in June 2014, and we did not get a single review on it until August of that year. So at least 2 months. And make no mistake, before June 2014, even fewer people gave a damn about the Ascension Epoch. The Ascension Epoch is the name of the universe that my husband and I set all our books in, if you didn't know. Here's what happens when you're a creative type. You work for days on an illustration or comic page, weeks on a short story, chapter, or animation. You pull an all-nighter on the final night of details. You put that last ink line or splash of color, or type that last period, and you're all hyped up. You're exhausted, but you can't sleep, because you've just built the ground floor of your Taj Mahal. You've just created the heart from which the lifeblood of your entire creation will thrive. You wait anxiously for the first person who might care to pass by. You show it to your mom, or spouse, or kid. You email it to your best friend and then call them. And they probably sincerely give it a look and say, "That's cool," or "That's nice." If they're generous, you may even get a specific compliment like, "I like how you draw her hair in this panel," or "That one line was really funny." And that's it. You get 2 minutes tops of glory. But that's okay. There are millions of people on the internet. You post it online, maybe get a like or two. If you're really lucky, you'll get a 3-word comment like, "That looks cool." And that's it. Now, the silence. This isn't to knock the internet, and it's definitely not a knock on your mother, spouse, kid, or best friend. It's just that no one can appreciate your art or writing the way you do. You put 6 hours into the illustration or 10 hours into the comic page. You put 4 days into that short story. It's a labor for you, but if someone's really appreciating a drawing, they may spend a minute looking at it. If someone is really taking their time with that short story, they may spend 2 hours with it. If it's a chapter, far less. Yes, if someone showed you 1 page of a comic or tore 1 page out of a book and handed it to you, you might be able to appreciate some things about it. It might be good, but it's not going to hook you. Building excitement takes time, and a lot of it. And building a fan base takes exposure and trust. And those cannot be built with a single page, a single chapter, or even a single issue or a single book. No one cares about your characters because no one knows your characters. Except you, of course. So if you need constant back-patting and encouragement to motivate you to sit down and draw or write about your characters, you're gonna have a bad time. A real bad time. Because no one is going to be as excited about your characters as you are. And no one is going to be excited round the clock when you need encouragement. Funny story. My mom's not fond of comic books. When I was 20-something, living at home and paying rent, I once pulled an all-nighter, finishing a comic page that I was super proud of. I finished at 6 a.m. and I was stoked to show someone, so I eagerly waited the extra hour for my mom to get up and get breakfast. I was trying to do a very loosely autobiographical comic of my college experience, with a lot of fiction and sci-fi elements thrown in for the heck of it. She took a 20-second look at it, made a little frown, and said, "You stayed up all night doing that?" I was less patient back then, and had a really hard time keeping myself enthused about my original work when no one wanted to see it or cared about it. So I scrapped that comic after 3 pages. Back then, I gave up on my idea. But if you give up on your idea, that's it. No one's going to pick it back up and dust it off for you. To succeed as a creative type, you need to love your characters, and you need to love them more than you love any other characters. For me, that happened when my husband and I created the Ascension Epoch universe. As a matter of fact, that setting allowed me to fold in some older characters I loved, but couldn't find a place for or a good story to tell with at the time. As a matter of fact, fictionalized me from that old comic got even more fictionalized and became Callie in our EastEnder Regular series. You meet her, but she's not named in the first book, After Dark. She turns out to be much more sarcastic than I am in real life. No one wants to read about the shy, mousy girl, though I can be pretty sarcastic in my head. And she's homeless, which I've never been. But the fact that I made a character based on myself homeless probably says something about me. Maybe a video talking about putting different aspects of your personality into different characters to make a diverse cast of characters is in order. But it is not this day. Anyway, the Ascension Epoch is a big place with lots of moving parts. There are superheroes, normal people doing heroic things, paranormal detectives, immortals, demigods, and more. Oh, and Martians. Lots of Martians. The characters in the Institute for Metaphysical and Phenomenological Studies, or IMPS, are usually side characters to our main series. The Defenders compared to the Avengers, if you will, or the Ghostbusters compared to the Men in Black. I'm not talking about popularity with that last one, but size and scope of the operation. Ghostbusters are much more low rent than Men in Black. I like the Imps character so much, when I got an opportunity to do an unrelated medieval fantasy comic strip, I took our modern-day New Jersey paranormal detectives and repurposed them into an alternate universe. Because I didn't want to wait for them to appear in our normal Challenger Confidential books. I try to make everything I create tie back to the Ascension Epoch in some way, even if that means it won't be as popular as if I did a, say, fan art drawing of Spider-Man. Because repeated exposure is very, very important for original characters. And it is a fight to get people to look at your work. I have had hundreds of heart-sinking moments when someone at a Comic-Con or pop culture convention took a free preview flyer from me and tucked it away, uninterested, into their bag in a way that just screamed that they would never, ever look at that flyer. It's a fight to get your book into people's hands. You're convincing them to part with their hard-earned money after all, and they could easily buy entertainment from an artist or author they already know. And even if you win those two fights, you have no control over whether they actually imbibe your work. Pause for a moment and think about how many books or comics or movies that you own that you have yet to read or watch. I have dozens. You probably have dozens. And it's not a lack of interest. Things just get shuffled around and you forget about them, or you don't have time right now, or you may not be in the mood for the genre if you do have time, etc., etc. What I'm saying is, it's a battle to get people to notice your characters, and it's a battle only you can fight. No one is going to shoulder that burden for you. Because the strange truth is, the only way to get someone to care about a character they don't care about is to show them more of that character they don't care about. Your characters will feel more real to people in your second book than they do in your first book, and more real still by the third book. The more you show off your character's life and experiences, the more they go from an interesting acquaintance to a friend to family. Yes, you need to keep working on that project no one cares about to get people to care. So you need to draw that next page for you and your characters. You need to write that next chapter for you and your characters. And when you have your little victory, when you finish a small milestone, you need to celebrate for yourself. Yes, you can show your friends and family, but you can't feed off their excitement alone. You have to stoke your own excitement. You have to treat yourself to a piece of chocolate, or a really nice cup of coffee, or a scoop of ice cream or something. But not something that takes you away from the drawing board or keyboard. That's a no-no. You need to treat yourself and then get back to work, because no one is going to write or draw that next page but you. And when your first book comes out and there's no fanfare, you need to get started on the second book. But if you find that inner strength and you continue, there's hope. Most of our books take place in different series. But because we have multiple books out, people trust that we will put additional books out in our series that only contain one book so far. It took time and work and waiting, but our Ascension Epoch books have sold, and people have read them, and we've gotten reviews and comments and emails, and people coming up to us at conventions and asking for more. We have readers. And there's nothing like someone coming up to you and saying they want more Signalman stories, or asking them, of the 3 books by us that you've read, who is your favorite character? And having them say, Bulwark. Or, having them be bad with names and saying, the guy who's made of stone. I suppose Bulwark does kind of have a hard-to-remember name, not short and snappy like AMP. Don't create for the audience you don't have yet. Create for you. Create for your character's sake. And if you keep at it and work for it, the audience may come to you. The characters I'm drawing today, Labyrinth, Blackburn, and Ruby, appear in a half-page monthly comic strip in Bexim's Bazaar tabletop gaming magazine. They will also appear in future Challenger Confidential books. The first illustrated novella, Copper Knights and Granite Men, is available from Amazon.com and other online booksellers. I usually give my own pitch for our books, but considering the topic today, I'll let one of our reader reviews do the talking. As the title dramatically alludes, a supernatural world of alchemy and science is laid over our own reality, and it is here the book shines. The action itself is unexpected. Each character has a history that I hope will be elaborated upon in future adventures, and the inclusion of everyman Pete Halstein within the Incredible adds a real and gritty feel. The Promethean is at the center of the plot, and the writer hints at a mysterious history filled with a variety of foes and friends. If you'd like to support the channel, buying a book is a good way to go. I've also set up a subscribe star with various perks at various tiers, from voting on what topics I talk about to getting ebooks when we release them. Right now, one cool guy named Charlie is calling the shots. So if you want to say, too, subscribe star is your way to go. I do pay attention to what folks say in the comments here, of course. And if you have any questions or suggestions about motivation or what I'm drawing or anything else, ask away below. I'd especially love to know what you do to reward yourself when you've crossed a creative milestone. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to tag along if you like learning from my creative victories and mistakes. Most importantly, though, have an awesome day. Presto, over and out. Two addendums. Firstly, I'm lucky in that I married someone who is as enthusiastic about creating and writing as I am. Mike and I can absolutely feed off each other's enthusiasm, and that has absolutely been part of my success. And I'm also lucky that some of my friends have an abundance of excitement for what we do. Our friend Russ has read all our books, come to cons to help us out, and contributed ideas and characters to the Ascension Epoch. My friend Patty has helped me make costumes for our characters, visited us at cons, and is my personal art cheerleader when I need a pick-me-up. She hasn't read any of our books, but she's a busy gal raining destruction upon the monsters of Warcraft and, working, a day job. But that's okay, because your friends will encourage you in different ways depending on their interests. I guess I'm trying to say that you're lucky if you get any encouragement, and very lucky indeed if you get heaps of encouragement and help. But your primary and sole source of encouragement has to be yourself. Secondly, I said I've dealt with unenthusiastic crowds at comic and pop culture cons. The modern Comic Con is more like a Marvel and DC movie celebration, and pop culture cons tend to have movie and TV actors. So it can be really hit or miss as to how receptive the crowd will be to books, comics, anything that's not film. But at literature or book conventions, sci-fi cons and horror cons, the crowds seem to be much more receptive to new ideas. The horror cons are actually a little funny because I tend to think people today think of Saw and slasher films when they think of horror, and our books are not chock full of gore and mindless murderers. But we do have elements of classic horror. In our Challenger Confidential books, in our universe, the Promethean was the inspiration for Mary Shelley to write Frankenstein. And our East End Irregular series has lots of weird fiction influences. So we have werecats and this creepy guy with demon eyes. Just enough to appeal to that crowd. The footage I'm showing is from Blobfest at the Colonial Theater in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, by the way. Very fun event, very pleasant, receptive crowd. It's a celebration of the 1958 movie The Blob, obviously, starring Steve McQueen. The scene at the end of the film with terrified moviegoers fleeing the theater was filmed in this very theater, and so they designed a convention around it, showing the movie and other horror films, recreating the fleeing moviegoers scene, and having a street fair with vendors and music. And, in an odd coincidence, I got to meet one interesting attendee who was not a con guest, but was just browsing around for old horror films and other memorabilia. I forgot to tell him he needs to do a video on Phantasy Star 3, but I'm sure he has way too many suggestions anyway. Have an awesome day, folks. Presto, over and out.
Farewell and adieu to you, fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu to you, ladies of Spain.